Hey everybody, today we've got another tier ranking, and this time it's going to be the 2028 Republicans. I already did the Democrats, today we're going to see what we've got for the GOP. And just like with the Dems, this isn't really who I like or don't like, it's who I think would be more likely to win both a primary and a general election. And let me also say this is way too early to seriously be doing this. A lot of these people probably won't be relevant in a couple of years, and the other ones we have no idea how they're going to posture themselves once the Trump administration gets underway. And a lot of this is going to depend on how much success Trump has while he's in office. So there are a whole lot of variables here, but I'm going to try to not spend forever on this. So we've got tiers A, B, C, D, and F. If you're looking for the S tier or the Z tier or the double S tier, you're not going to find it here. I know a lot of other people do those tiers, but I'm keeping it simple, A through F. So with all that said, I've got a list of potential candidates here. They have the labels. Let's get started here. First, we've got Brian Kemp, governor of Georgia. And Kemp is a guy who had some issues with Trump after 2020, but the base didn't really revolt against him. He won the primary, he won re-election. I think he's more likely to run for Senate than for president. But because of his popularity, I do think he could have some success in a primary, potentially also some even in a general. Plus his name ID is already moderately high. I think that's good enough to start off here right in the middle in C. Next, Byron Donalds, U.S. rep from Florida. Donalds is potentially an up-and-comer. He's loyal to Trump. I think the base likes him. I think he could have some success in a primary, but because his profile I think is just a little bit too low at this point, I'm going to put him a little under Kemp. We're going to put him in D. Next, we've got Chris Christie, everybody's favorite. And personally, I always thought Christie was a little bit stronger than I think some people give him credit for, usually the Trump base. He did vote for Trump in 16 and 20. I haven't heard what he did in 24. But given how angry he has gotten the base, I don't think he's going to have much success in a primary. So maybe throw him on the bottom, but I think there's going to be just enough here for the D. I think he'd probably have a better chance in the general election. Next, we've got Chris Sununu, or Sununu, outgoing governor of New Hampshire. And Sununu is another guy who has kind of angered the base. So even though I think he might do better in a general election, I don't think he would get too far into primary. We're going to also throw him next to Chris Christie. Next, looks like we've got Donald J. Trump on here. I'm not sure why he's on here. He would be term limited. So because of that, to be fair, we've got to put him on the bottom in F. Now, if there were no term limits, then I'd put him in the middle because again, we have no idea how his term in office would go. If he wipes out, he would be toxic for re-election. If he has success, he could do it again. But next, we've got Donald Trump Jr. Now, this is an interesting pick. He is the younger version of Trump, but I don't think he has the well-established range of charisma that his dad has. But in a primary, I think he would probably be formidable. But in a general election, I think a lot of people would just view this as a family dynasty, and I don't think that would have a ton of appeal, at least not right after Trump left office. So it's tough, but I think because the base would be much more open to him in a primary, I'm going to say that just gets him into the C tier. Next, how about Doug Burgum, outgoing governor of North Dakota? Burgum is bland, but he's also non-threatening. He already ran in 2024 and he didn't really do that much. At this point, his name ID is going to be a little bit higher. I don't think he's completely revolting to voters. There's enough there to put him in D. How about Elise Stefanik? Looks like she is going to be in the upcoming Trump administration. I think she's kind of hit or miss. I guess she could have some success in a primary. In general, she could do something as well. I think that could be enough here to put her in the middle. Next, Francis Suarez, mayor of Miami. And Suarez, I think, might have a little bit of friction between him and Ron DeSantis when DeSantis ran for re-election. I'm not sure how he's positioned himself recently, but I would guess he's not going to be cozy enough to the Trump brand to do a lot in a primary, so we're going to put him in D tier. Next, we've got Glenn Youngkin, governor of Virginia, and Youngkin's name is frequently thrown around for running for the Senate or for president. He does seem to have kind of bridged the gap between the Trump base and the establishment. His popularity has also been fairly high. He seems likable enough. I don't think he's the most loyal to the Trump brand, but at the same time, that could be an asset in the general election. So I do think Youngkin could have success in a primary as well as a general. I think we're going to put him in the B tier. Next, how about Greg Abbott, governor of Texas? Abbott, I think, has had a couple of hiccups over the years, but I think by now it's going to be relatively smooth sailing. He's from an important state. He is a little bit older now, but I think he could potentially be good enough here for somewhere around the middle of the pack. We'll throw him up there in C. Next, we've got J.D. Vance, the incoming VP. Now, if anybody's going to go in A, I'm going to have to put Vance in there because obviously I think he would be most likely to win a primary. In a general election, it's not clear. Of course, Trump has not even gotten into office yet, so there's a lot of range here for Vance, but he's very loyal to the Trump brand. He's a lot younger. I think he's likely to coast in a primary and be potentially competitive in a general. Next, how about Joe Lombardo, governor of Nevada? Lombardo, I think, is also interesting. We've got to see how he does in his re-election bid in a couple of years. So I think there's some potential here for Lombardo, but for now we'll throw him in the middle. We'll put him in C. How about John James, U.S. Rep from Michigan? Well, James has a couple of big blemishes on his resume. He's got back-to-back losses for the U.S. Senate. He didn't do terrible. Maybe he could win in the future, but for now I think his profile is going to be a little bit too low. I'm going to throw him in the D tier. Next, how about Josh Hawley, Senator from Missouri? Hawley, I think, could be competitive in a primary. In a general election, I don't think he'd be the worst. He does have some Senate experience, but he is polarizing. I also don't think he's extremely charismatic. For the primary, I would put him a little bit higher, but considering the general election as well, we're going to throw him in the C tier, but it's up for debate. Next, how about Katie Britt, Senator from Alabama? Britt, I don't think is a household name, even considering her response to the State of the Union. She's not from an important swing state. I think it's kind of a wait-and-see situation with Britt. For now, I don't think there's enough there. We're going to put her in D. How about Kim Reynolds, governor of Iowa? Reynolds endorsed DeSantis over Trump in the primary, so that's going to cost her big time with the base. Maybe it blows over, but I think that's enough here to put her in D. How about Kristi Noem, governor of South Dakota and potentially a part of the incoming administration. She was a potential competitor for VP, but I always thought she was kind of a weaker candidate. Then the whole dog story came out, and that pretty much killed her chances. So I actually do not think Noem is that strong. I'm going to put her next to Reynolds in D. How about Liz Cheney? Well, this is an easy one. This is going to go F. Ironically, next to Trump, Cheney just has zero appeal with the base. Outside of some never Trump Republicans, I don't think she could do anything in a primary. I don't think she would have really much success in a general either. It's easy to beat up on Cheney, but let's move on to Marco Rubio. I think he's kind of straddled that gray area between the establishment and pro-Trump. So I don't think he's exactly what the base is looking for, but I don't think he'd be a total wipeout either. In a general election, he actually could be competitive. I think there might be just enough here to throw him into the B tier next to Youngkin. How about Marjorie Taylor Greene? She's definitely pro-Trump, but she's going to be way too controversial to do anything in a general election. In a primary, she would be a little bit stronger, but I also don't think it would be all that strong. I think we're going to put her in the D tier. How about Matt Gaetz? Gaetz is kind of a wild card. We're not really even sure what he's going to end up doing. He might be too much of a dud for a general election. I think he could have success running for something in Florida. So I'm not sure about Gaetz. I think he could have more success in a primary, so we're going to put him just enough into the low C tier. How about Mike Lee, Senator from Utah? I don't know if Lee would excite the base enough to actually be competitive in a primary, but there could be enough here for the C tier. Let's just put him right in the middle. How about Mike Pence? Everybody knows this guy, and I actually don't think he would have much of a chance in a primary or in a general election. You can make a case for putting him in the D tier, given his experience in name ID. But for me, I think that there's just enough here to put him in the F tier. I don't see him having much of a future in politics. Next, Mike Pompeo. Pompeo's name also gets thrown around every once in a while. He did serve under Trump. He's not from an important state. I really don't think he has much charisma. Maybe I'm underestimating this guy, but I think that there's enough here to probably throw him on the bottom as well next to Pence. How about Nikki Haley? I think she'd be stronger in a general election, but in a primary, not so much. So I can't put her on the bottom. She's going to go in the D tier. How about Ron DeSantis? DeSantis was kind of the guy who was maybe going to take down Trump in that primary. We all know how that went, but I think it's pretty much water under the bridge at this point. DeSantis is young enough. I think he has enough appeal with the base that he would be able to be at least competitive in a primary, if not be able to win it. I know he's polarizing in a general election, but I think there's enough here to probably throw him next to Rubio in B. But Sarah Huckabee Sanders, governor of Arkansas. She's close to Trump, but I don't think she has much appeal to a general election, and I don't think there'd be much there in a primary either. She's not the worst. We're going to put her in D. How about Ted Cruz? Cruz is a guy who's gone back and forth over the years at trying to challenge Trump and then being close to him. I think he has likability issues for a general election. In a primary, he'd probably do a little bit better at this point, but I don't think there's enough there for C. I'm going to throw him in D. About Tim Scott. Scott is a super nice guy, but I don't think he comes off as a fighter. That's going to be what the base is more interested in. I thought he'd be more likely as a VP candidate. And in general, I don't think he would be that strong either. So I think it's borderline D, C. I'm going to throw him next to Cruz in D. How about Tom Cotton, Senator from Arkansas? Cotton, I think, has a certain appeal with the base. And in general, I don't think there'd be a lot there. We're going to put him next to Scott in D. How about Tucker Carlson? Now, Carlson is an outside-the-box pick. That's sort of like Trump, but he is considered highly controversial. Some of it's going to be fair, but obviously a lot of it is going to be unfair. I'm not actually sure how much damage Tucker could do in a general election at this point. In a primary, I think he could have some success. So I think that kind of evens out to a borderline CB, but we're going to throw him in the C tier because I think there's just a lot of unknowns there. Next, how about Vivek Ramaswamy? Now, he is a guy who's pretty loyal to Trump. He's a lot younger, but like Tucker, he really doesn't have any elected political experience. So I think he's somebody to watch over the years to see if his stock rises or if it ends up falling flat. For right now, I think he would be competitive in a primary. I know he'd be polarizing in a general, but I don't think he'd be that weak either. So I think for now, we're going to hold him in the C tier. Last, we've got Will Hurd, former U.S. rep from Texas along the border. Hurd is a guy I don't think we get much attention from the base in a primary. In a general, I think he'd be inconsequential. That might be enough here to throw him in the F tier all the way on the bottom. So that's it. Those are the tiers. And not a lot of people at the top. Vance is there for obvious reasons. There's a good chunk of these that are also borderline. But for the most part, there's just a lot of question marks. And it depends on how these people position themselves during the Trump years. But for now, with the information that I have and my perception of these candidates, this is how strong I think they would be in both a primary and a general. And just like the Democrats, I try to keep my personal biases pretty low. It's always tough to try to put yourself in the shoes of the broader electorate. Sometimes we think everybody thinks just like us, but a lot of times we're way off. So it all depends on what you want to emphasize or what you want to minimize. But for now, these are the tiers that I've got, so let me know in the comments. How would your early tier ranking look for the 2028 Republicans? Do you agree with a lot of these picks? Do you disagree with a bunch? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.